She gave food to a poor crippled man every day. Then one day, an unimaginable thing happened. Let us find out what happened in this incredible and emotional story. Before we continue, please, don't forget to subscribe for more touching and motivational stories like this one. Grace was just 22 years old, but life had already taught her hard lessons. She grew up in a small town called Onitsha, raised by a mother who sold roasted corn by the roadside. Her father had disappeared when she was only 6, and no one ever spoke of him again. It was just her and Mama, struggling to survive. When Grace turned 16, her mother became very sick. They had no money for hospital bills, and every little thing had to be sold: clothes, pots, even the radio. Grace dropped out of school to take care of Mama. When Mama passed away, Grace cried for 3 days without stopping. But life did not wait. She had to find a way to eat. She moved to the city of Onitsha and slept on a friend's floor for weeks. Her friend sold second-hand clothes, but Grace wanted to do something else, something she knew. From watching her mother, she had learned how to cook simple meals that filled the belly and warmed the heart. Rice, beans, momwa, jollof. She started small. With the little money she saved from helping people wash clothes, she bought a second-hand wooden food cart and one big pot. She found a busy corner near the market where many workers passed during lunch. The first day, she cooked just enough for 10 plates. She sold everything. The second day, she made 12. Again, she sold out. Slowly, she built a routine. Grace didn't have much, but she was proud of her work. She cleaned her cart every morning. She tied her yellow apron carefully before opening. And even when it rained or the sun was too hot, she never complained. Customers noticed her neatness. Her food tasted like home. Soon, she became known as that kind girl with the yellow apron. But behind her smile was a tired heart. Rent was always due. Prices of food kept rising. Some nights, she went to bed hungry. Still, she never stopped cooking the next day. Every day, just before noon, Grace would notice an elderly man from the edge of the street. He didn't walk like other people. He dragged his body with his arms, pulling his legs behind him as if they no longer belonged to him. His shirt was always faded, and his trousers were torn at the knees. He never begged, never spoke, and never caused trouble. He would crawl quietly to the corner beside Grace's food cart and sit with his back against the wall. Most people just walked past him. Some looked at him with pity, others with disgust. A few even scolded him to move away to avoid making someone trip or fall, but many just pretended he wasn't there. The children nearby called him names and ran away laughing. But Grace saw something different. The first time she noticed him, it was raining. She was packing up her food when she saw him shivering beside the wall, soaked and shaking. Without thinking, she went back to her cart, took the last plate of rice, and handed it to him. He didn't say a word. Just looked at her with tired eyes, then nodded slowly. That was it. From that day on, Grace started saving a plate of food for him every afternoon. No matter how many customers came, she made sure there was something for him. Sometimes it was rice and beans. Other times, just plain jollof with a small piece of meat. He never asked. But he always ate every last grain, slowly and quietly. Her friends and fellow vendors didn't understand. "Why are you feeding that man every day?" one woman asked. "You think he will give you money?" Grace just smiled and continued what she was doing. She didn't do it for praise. She didn't do it for attention. It just felt right. There was something in the man's eyes that reminded her of her late mother: pain, silence, and quiet strength. And maybe, deep down, Grace felt that helping him was her way of giving back what she had once received when she was hungry and hopeless. The next day started like a normal morning. Grace woke up before the sun rose, as usual. She cooked rice and beans with palm oil, added some fried plantain, and packed everything neatly into her food cart. She wore her yellow apron, tied her scarf, and pushed her cart toward the market corner. But something felt off. By midday, she noticed something strange. The man wasn't there. The spot by the wall where he always sat was empty. Grace looked around. Maybe he was late. Maybe he had gone to use the public restroom. She waited. 1 hour passed. Then 2. Still no sign of him. Grace tried not to worry, but she couldn't focus. She kept glancing toward the empty space, expecting to see him crawling over any minute. But he never came. The plate of food she saved for him sat untouched on the cart, getting cold. That night, as she packed up to leave, she wrapped the food and left it on the ground near the wall, just in case he came late. She went home with a heavy heart. The next day, it happened again. The wrapped food was never touched. She had to discard it. Still no sign of him. By the third day, Grace couldn't hide her concern. She asked the shoe shiner nearby, "Have you seen the crippled man who stays by this wall?" The man shook his head. "No, not since 3 days now. I thought maybe he traveled." Traveled? Grace frowned. But how would he travel? He barely walks. That evening, Grace walked to the nearby health clinic to ask if any injured man had been brought in. They said no. She even checked the street behind the market, hoping he had moved there. Nothing. It was like he had vanished into thin air. She couldn't explain why it hurt so much. He was just a stranger. He hardly even spoke. But still, she felt something missing, like a thread had been pulled from her chest and the hole refused to close. Then, on the 4th day, just as Grace was closing her store, a small boy ran up to her and dropped something into her hand. It was an envelope. And on the front, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "For the girl with the yellow apron." Grace didn't open the envelope right away. For the rest of that evening, she carried it with her like a heavy rock in her chest. She placed it inside her handbag while she cooked dinner. She tucked it under her pillow while she tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. She kept thinking of the crippled man, where he could be, why he had sent her this, and what it all meant. The next morning, before she opened her cart for the day, she lit a candle and sat on the floor in her tiny room. Her hands shook as she opened the envelope slowly, careful not to tear anything inside. There were 4 things. The first was an old ID card. Government issued. It showed the photo of a much younger version of the crippled man, standing tall, smiling, in a clean suit. The name read, Mr. Obinna. He didn't look poor or crippled at all. The second item was a folded medical report. Grace scanned the words. It said that Mr. Obinna had been involved in a hit-and-run accident 10 years ago. Spinal damage. Lost ability to walk. No family found. The report was old, worn, and had hospital stamps on the bottom. The third was a small note. Written in shaky handwriting, it said, "You are the first person who has treated me like a human being in 10 years. Not with pity. Not with shame. Just kindness. You reminded me of who I was. Thank you." And the last item. It was a torn piece of paper, a check. Grace blinked. It was real. Issued in her name. The amount written on it made her heart skip, 50 million naira. She gasped. Her mouth went dry. This had to be a mistake. She ran outside, hoping to find the boy who had dropped the envelope, but he was not there. She looked everywhere, the street, the wall, the nearby stalls. Nothing. The man had vanished again. But this time, he left behind something that would change her life forever. Grace stood frozen, the paper trembling in her hand. She didn't know whether to scream, cry, or fall to her knees. Why would a crippled man with nothing give her this? Who really was Mr. Obinna Ikena? And what was she supposed to do now? Grace held the check in her trembling hands like it was on fire. 50 million naira. She had stared at the number for 10 minutes, thinking it was a mistake. Maybe someone forged it. Maybe the man made a mistake. Maybe the boy gave her the wrong envelope. No, this can't be right, she whispered. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, with shaky legs and the envelope pressed tightly to her chest, Grace went to the bank whose name was printed on the check. Her slippers flapped noisily against the tiled floor. She walked slowly to the customer service desk, waiting until the young woman behind the counter looked up. "Good morning, please. I was given this, but I don't think it's real." The woman took it politely, read it, and her eyebrows lifted. "Just a moment, please." Grace's heart dropped. What if they called the police? What if this was fraud? Minutes later, a man in a dark suit and gentle eyes approached. "You're Grace Namdi." She nodded, barely able to speak. "Please come with me." Inside a small office, she sat on the edge of the chair, sweaty palms pressed together. "I'm Mr. Tond, the branch manager." "Don't worry." "No trouble at all," he said calmly, placing the check between them. "This check is real. And so is the money." Grace's eyes widened. "But I don't understand. This can't be for me. I sell food. I'm not anyone important." Maybe it was a mistake. Mr. Ton leaned back in his chair and sighed, then opened a drawer and pulled out a file. Inside was a printed photo of Mr. Obinna, younger, standing straight, smiling in a suit. 10 years ago, Mr. Obinna Ikena was a commissioner. He lost his wife and child in a car crash. He was also hit in that accident. He survived, but couldn't walk again. He withdrew from public life, sold most of his things, and disappeared. But from time to time, he would send us instructions to help someone in need. Quietly, Grace covered her mouth. "He came here months ago," Mr. Ton continued, "and gave us instructions. If you, and only you, ever showed up with that check, we were to honor it and assist you fully. He said, she fed me with dignity. I want her to feed others with pride." Tears dropped down Grace's face. The man by the wall wasn't just crippled. He had been broken, by life, by pain, and somehow, he had found light in her. And now, he had left her with something too big to understand. For weeks, Grace couldn't touch the money. She kept the check wrapped in cloth under her pillow, too afraid to spend even 1 naira. Each time she looked at it, her chest would grow tight. 50 million naira. From a man who had nothing, at least, that's what everyone thought. Grace still sold food from her small cart. She served her regulars, smiled at passers-by, and carried her yellow apron like a second skin. But inside, her heart was wrestling with something bigger than she had ever faced. What do you do with a gift this big, and this sacred? After much prayer, thinking, and talking with a kind lawyer from the bank, she decided. Mr. Obinna had seen something in her, not because of what she owned, but because of how she gave. So, she would keep giving. But wisely. First, she opened a restaurant. Not a big, fancy one, but neat and cozy. It had white walls, tiled floors, wooden chairs, and air that smelled like fried plantain and tomatoes too. She named it Yellow Apron Kitchen. This was where she cooked for paying customers. People from offices nearby, traders, and families came to eat, and she made honest income from it. Her food still had that same home-cooked taste, and her smile still greeted everyone at the door. But beside the restaurant, just a short walk away, she opened something else. She rented a small building near the market, painted it white and green, and put up a wooden sign that read, Obinna's Corner, where nobody eats alone. Inside, it wasn't fancy. Just clean tables, soft benches, and the smell of hot food. Every day, Grace cooked with a team she trained herself. Poor children, widows, street sweepers, bus drivers, anyone hungry, could walk in and eat a full plate. No questions asked. She gave them beans, rice, yam porridge, always served with a soft smile and kind words. She trained 3 young girls and 2 boys from her neighborhood to help her run both places. One day, a little boy who came to eat at Obinna's Corner tugged at her apron and asked, "Auntie, is this heaven?" Grace knelt and said, "No, my child. But someone once gave me a small piece of heaven, and I'm just sharing it." The framed photo of Mr. Obinna hung on the wall inside her restaurant, near the entrance. Below it, a small note read, "This corner exists because one man believed kindness still matters." Moral of the story: you don't have to be rich to be kind, but when kindness and blessing meet, the world can change. Grace didn't just receive money. She received trust. She built a life, helped others, and honored the quiet man who saw her heart before anyone else did. Thank you for staying to the end. If you like this story, do not forget to give us a like, a comment and a follow. See you next time. Bye.